Good morning. Well, it's not morning, it's afternoon now.
Hey, it is afternoon. It is afternoon. What's going?
It's nothing. It's nothing. I wanted to just run it for mine. So I know you were starting to check in. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Ooh.
What, are you delayed? You want me to introduce
No,
you? You want me to introduce you?
no, no, no. Just run the play.
All right. All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Shali, owner of Self Remedy. And today again we have the amazing Sydney Carroll. Sydney.
Hey, y'all.
I think today I kind of wanted to go on live with you. I know last time you did it, but this time I wanted to do it. And I wanted to kind of talk about like falling into alignment. And I think me and you have had a lot of conversations about like a lot of purpose and like where our lives have been lately and, just kind of trying to find our own paths. So I kind of just wanted to have like an unstructured conversation just about how like the beauty of falling into alignment, how sometimes alignment doesn't always look the best, while we in it. So that's where I was kind of at. Are you
Yep.
putting filters on? So I guess I want to ask you first, like, where are you kind of at with your alignment and how are you kind of feeling? Like, what's kind of going on?
Well, when I think about alignment, I think about a process. I
Okay.
don't ever really think that we arrive ever at any one given point and it's perfectly set up. I think that to me, when I think about my alignment, I think about purpose and I think about how, again, there's just steps that we take to move in that right direction. And as we move in that right direction, um, we gain access to the tools that we need to continue our journey. So
I like that.
I don't know that I think that I am on the right path towards being in alignment, to being in a place of agreement. When I also think about alignment, I also think about the perspective of being in alignment with the will of God for my life. So I don't live willy nilly. I'm not just out here just living. I want to make sure that I'm in agreement with the will of God and what's already been preordained for my life, for me, to make sure that I can access all the things that God has for me.
Okay. I like that. And I like how you said it. It's like, getting the tools and things we kind of need to kind of go where we need to go. I'm trying to copy you and I'm doing like a filter. Let me take that off. Because
Uh,
I really do
that's what
feel
you
that
had.
I think we kind of had like a private conversation about, just some things that's been kind of going on. I could say for me, I feel like I'm just on this journey and I'm just slowly but surely going up to where I need to go. And I think along the way, like a lot of steps and things have kind of transpired that have kind of just, kind of excited me, but also too is kind of making me nervous, a sense of uncomfortability with like, I'm so used to wanting to have some sense of control and groundedness that like everything kind of for me is just like, it's like, all right, I'm just walking and walking and walking and I'm so grateful to kind of be in that space. And I think for me, like ultimately, I think one of the greatest tools you can kind of have for me is having a support system. I know many
Mhm.
people kind of struggle with that nowadays, and I think a lot of people kind of are in a space of like trying to find some sense of connectability, and sometimes
Mm.
that connectability isn't always the best connectability for people.
Mm. Well, I think a couple of things that you said that I think were interesting was the response about reaching for things that we think we need and not being sure if it's actually what is required. And I think one of my biggest downfalls in the past has been at the rate of speed that I've traveled. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, my desire to get things done or to see the outcome has cost me a lot in the sense that I was just focused on um, production and not process. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that in that sense, I agree with you that in our rush, we just grab whatever, kind of like how we grab whatever when we're on the go to when we're headed to wherever. We'll
Yeah.
eat anything. We'll eat monkey meat. We'll eat cat dog on the stick with a little bit of rice. We'll do anything we can, to feed ourselves, but we don't really feed ourselves with the best things. And so I do think that you're right. And it stood out to me. This point stood out to me because it also makes me say and reflect on the journey to where we're headed. How much of that time do we spend in a survival mode? How
Mm-hmm.
much of that time are we actually, experiencing what is the happening, or what is the events that are, what are the events that are taking place, and really where does that put us in our ability to grow from everything in that moment? Because if I'm in survival mode and I'm just gonna eat whatever, I'm really not gonna have enough simple sugars and natural sugars to sustain my energy. I'm gonna crash in about 2 hours after I get that Starbucks, or I'm gonna crash in about 4 hours after I eat that Popeyes. And I think it's the same thing with our relationships. We just connect with people because it's convenient or because they're right there. We don't vet them. We don't check their mindsets. And the word of God says, "What two men walk together, lest they be in agreement." And so sometimes you'll find yourself in sticky situations, but that's because you've coupled with people from a survival place, trying to make sure you can make it, just because it was convenient, just because it just so lined up. And I do want to say that I do believe that people are put in your life at certain times, but I also believe that every relationship affects you. It either takes from you, or it adds from you, or it adds to you. And you have to be clear about what it is that you're in the market for. So I definitely agree with that sentiment that you pulled out. And I think the other thing is that a lot of times we stay in our emotions, or we stay in how we feel because we secretly like it. Like, we like the rush of our anxiety. We like the rush of our anger. We like how it feels to react to things instead of taking responsibility for things. And I think that is a sticky, in the words of Megan Thee Stallion, that's a tricky place. That's a tricky thing. But I think it's valid that you said that. And um, it all just kind of goes back to survival. I think it's a self-preservation thing. I know how to survive when I'm anxious, so I'm going to lean into anxiety right now because that feels good. I'm going to let anxiety speak for me. I know how to survive when I'm angry, so I'm going to lean into that anger. But what it does is it keeps us from being able to glean what's happening in the present, in that moment. And then that's how we get out of alignment, because again, we've now joined people, connected forces with emotions and responses and behaviors that don't set us up for what's next.
I think you said like some real good. I love when you go into your little spills, because I feel like a part of it's your natural being, but I also feel like when you first described like doing, was it production over making progress? I think that was like number one of the key things that stuck with me, because I think a lot of us do lean into survival because we make chaos become like a livable situation when it's not. And I like how I really love that point when you made that, because I feel like a lot of us do need to like stop our rate out of survival, because that does create like long-term impacts on our body, on our mind, because if I'm always used to waiting to the deadline to get something done, yes, I can perform during the deadline. However, is that healthy for me long term? And I don't think that's healthy long term for many of us.
Right.
And I also feel like you brought up a good point about the stickiness that a lot of us kind of get ourselves in. I think many of us sometimes put ourselves in situations out of, like you said, conveniency. It's a convenient to hang around what I'm used to or I'm comfortable with. It takes greater effort, in my opinion, to dream bigger, see things bigger, and seek out those bigger opportunities, and do it with like such a relentlessness and knowing that like you were meant to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I hate doing this whole live thing. That's not my thing. But I know you kind of good better at it than I am. In my opinion, I think you are better than I am, just because it's just your natural being. Like, I mean, it is what it is. But I appreciate and I value, our conversations and things we kind of discuss, because I think that for me, I don't think our friendship was bonded over survival. I think it was genuinely bonded. And I think that I appreciate those moments where you can kind of call me out for my ish. And I think many of us kind of need more people that kind of like speaks to that space. And we got to stop being so used to wanting having yes men around us, people that always agree with everything. Because if 9 out of 10 chances all your homies always agreeing with everything you do, then they're not your real friends. Because you should
Yeah,
want
that's
to have people that can kind of hold you accountable, but also too can call you out about things that don't feel comfortable.
yeah. I think the last part that you kind of brought into the conversation about relationships is key. I mean, relationships are so like complex, and I say that as a person who spent majority of the few decades that I've been alive, managing and living on my own. And I remember the shock of deciding that I really wanted friends. I made that decision maybe in about 2015. Um, and I remember like realizing, that people aren't perfect and that people are gonna fall short. And I remember coming to the realization that I wasn't perfect. That even though I tried my very best to show up for people as much as I could, I was doing things from a bad space. And so anyway, when you said that just now, about the quality check of our relationships, I definitely think that that's a rich place to start. Also with your self-evaluation. Not only are the people around me, are they supporting me as I move forward in my endeavors, but also like, what in what ways are these relationships reflective of who I am and where I need to grow? In what ways are these relationships reflective of, you know, um, where I'm headed, and how do these things connect? And I think it's a really tough conversation. I was talking to another friend of mine, and she was telling me, some things about some long-term relationships. And my response to her was like, oh yeah, cut it off, end it, dead it. Like, who's doing that? Hey, we too grown for that. Like, we got too many things to do. We got too much going on to be playing those kind of games. And she struggled with that. And I think that when we realize how important it is, to stay connected to living things, we will leave dead things quicker. We'll walk away from those things. So, but I think it also goes back to initial point of fear. People are afraid of being alone. People
Mm-hmm.
are afraid of having to deal with themselves. People are afraid of reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And those are places that you got to start with if you want to get into alignment. Being in alignment or being on that path to alignment also means that we have a lot of tough conversations and tough talks with ourselves
Yeah.
about how well did I do? Like, what did I do? What do I need to do different? How can I show up differently in this space?
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to do, differently? And what did I do well? Because we do things well. We all have strengths, but being able to be reflective really sets the tone for how we move forward and even how we maneuver certain relationships, because every relationship is also not a friendship. Some things are just there for observation, growth, and reflection.
I agree. And I like how you said your starting point where you said when we learn to be present with the livable things, we are easily able to dead the old things. I think I might have said it wrong, but that's what I received what you said, and I agree with you
Yeah.
because we feel like a lot of us we stay hidden in the past, so we don't allow ourselves to consume anything from the current. And I think for me personally,
Yeah.
I sometimes struggle with that. And like you said before, it is that mindset of like taking what you need from your past, but not allowing yourself to become stagnant, stuck in the past. And I think many of us don't know how to play that dual reality of like, well, I remember the glory days, the good things about this. And it's like, yeah, but the good things can still come, and that even though
Yeah.
that situation you're currently in doesn't look like what you used to have, but you also have to remind yourself that growth also happens. And I think for me, I've really been on this whole like growing thing, like really allowing myself to understand the importance of quality over quantity. And I really mean that in such a big way. Like I'm so more so about going inward because again, next year we'll be 30, me before you, but and I think for me that's a
Oh.
don't I think that's a big thing for me because I've been telling people lately that like 10 years ago when I was 19, I made myself a 10-year plan. And as of last year, early this year, I had pretty much did everything I said I wanted to do. And it's kind of had me in this weird space of like reflecting on like, what else could I do for myself? What else can I
Mhm.
kind of learn? How can I else grow? And I think it's scary for me because it's that fear of, will I be able to live up to what I did before, And I think that's where that journey of like that self reflection of like looking at the good, but also to anticipating. I'm excited to be 30 next year because I know I still have more life to live. And I know I don't have to be stuck back in my 20s because life still continues, life still progresses, as long as I allow myself to kind of grow and be okay with that growth. And like you said earlier, like that is a true thing about alignment is like also to measuring your progress. Many of us stay in many things, not really taking note of like, are you really growing or are you just
Mhm.
existing and just continuing on this path? And then some of us stay so in that routine type of mindset that we don't know how to, like, you know, gather and gain more clarity for ourselves. Like, I'm a big firm believer. I don't want to get to the end of my life and be like, dang, I wish I had shoulda, woulda, couldas. And it's like, that's why I live so much. You know me, I live on the edge. Like, I do a lot of things that like most people wouldn't feel comfortable doing, but it's more so because I know that it's for me, and what's for me not always for everybody else.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I think as we, um, kind of ruminate on these contexts, I mean, Shali, you're not going to be able to do what you did in your 20s. You're just not going to,
Mm-hmm.
because greater is ahead of you.
And
So if
the
you
body
do
don't
what you
feel
did in your 20s,
and the body don't feel
if
the
you
same. The body don't feel
well,
the
not
same.
not I'm not saying it from that perspective. I'm saying that you can't duplicate what's already been done, because that's the past. My daddy always say, "What's behind you ain't greater than what's ahead of you." So you'll never be able to duplicate that, because it's already done. Greater is ahead. So
Yeah,
it's never gonna be that.
yeah, I agree.
Get over it. It's never gonna be that. It's gonna be greater. It's gonna be greater. It's gonna be greater. And that's the thing. It's going to be greater. And so I agree with you that our mindsets do have to change. We do have to reset. We do have to get away from you know looking at what it was. I do agree with you. You're 100% right. Looking at what it will be. What will we do different to make it even greater? Because we can't duplicate what's already been done. We
I
can
agree.
only perfect it. We can only grow it and cultivate it. Or at least that's my perspective, because I don't want to go back. I always want to move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I agree 100% with you. And I think it's also too, it's exciting to, like, think about the new chapters in life, and
Yeah.
kind of resonate on, like, imagine, like, even bigger than what you thought you could have. Because I'll be honest, like, just looking back and reflecting on a lot of things and what I thought I wanted and how life kind of just transitioned and changed, it got better than I thought I could ever expect it to be. And in
Yeah.
reality, like, that's the parts that I kind of always look forward to, because I don't want to say that I've allowed myself to get to my capacity of growth. I want to exceed my own expectations beyond me, because I know that for me, it's like, I don't want to ever be that type of person who doesn't allow growth to always happen, even in the small ways.
Yeah. I agree. I definitely agree. I think that's intense. And I also think too, as we, wrap up today, our conversations today, I think that's really the takeaway. Like, what are you doing what am I doing, really? It's me, I'm saying. But I'm asking myself, Sydney, what are you doing to ensure that moving forward, you are checking your steps, making sure that it's not survival moves, making sure that they're moves out of purpose, making sure that they're moves out of, you know, preparation, and, leading with what's next in mind and not what's past in mind. That's going to be like really big for me. I think just being honest with myself. Even now as I'm talking, I'm thinking, like, where are these things that need to be changed and need to be restructured, for
I,
sure.
I agree. And I like that point. And I agree too, as we wrap. I also too want to be mindful that, like, I'm also, like, very transparent with myself, but also too with the people in my life, so that if I need support, people can feel comfortable, like, checking on me in the way that I need to, have that. And getting really good with that whole inner conversation with myself, and being okay when things don't happen right away. Is
Mm-hmm.
making me. I appreciate you, I always do.
No problem.
And I'll talk to you later.
All right, girl. Until next
Bye.
time.
All
Peace.
right.